Hi everyone, welcome to Juniper Way. My name is Andrea, and for today's video I'm going to teach you guys and show you guys basically how I built an upholstered storage bench for my kids. It's in our front room. It's a toy chest basically, and I wanted to make it custom because it needed to fit a specific spot. Our front room is not super big. It's maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, so it's not really large, and a lot of couches would be really awkward in that space. And so we needed to be able to put toys somewhere, and we are currently renting out the apartment in our basement, so I can't send the kids downstairs to play, and so I wanted a place to put toys, and so that's what I'm building here. And my goal for it was to use a lot of the excess wood from my previous projects, like the chicken coops and the built-ins, built-in bookshelves, both of which have videos on YouTube. And I think I did fairly decently with that. I did end up buying these 2x4s here that I'm cutting up for the frame. And as an FYI, I'm not going to be talking the whole time. I plan to interject with music and such, just because there's not a whole lot to talk about. I just wanted to do a voiceover so that I can address some of the questions that you guys might have ahead of time. And if I don't address them, please comment and I will get to that. I do check my comments quite regularly. Anyway, so the reason I am doing this inside my house, first off, it is like 15 degrees outside. It was absolutely frigid when I was building this, and I don't like being in the cold. I'm a summer person all the way through. I love heat. But also, while I was building the chicken coop and my built-ins in my living room, I discovered that concrete isn't always perfectly flat, and my plastic tables from Walmart certainly are not flat. And so in order to help build a frame that would be as sturdy and as flat as possible, I used my kitchen floor. And I'm very pleased with how it turned out. It only had a tiny bit of wobble, and once I got the plywood frame or the plywood case on over the frame, there was no wobble at all. So really pleased with how that turned out. Here I ran into a couple problems. The frame, I tried gluing it. Like you can see, the frame, I didn't make it deep enough for me to be able to get my drill into that space between the two long boards. And so I ended up drilling like this. So I did the long sides, put the brackets in separately. And also, I didn't want to buy stuff that I didn't need, or I didn't want to spend a lot of money on this project. And so I did not go and buy longer screws. So I made do with what I had. I used the corner braces, bracket things, and very pleased with how that turned out. It ended up being a lot more sturdy than I thought it would be. I was going to glue all of the joints, but I ended up not doing that just because it was too much of a challenge, and I wasn't able to keep it from dripping onto the sheet that I'm standing on, and that was a problem. And my toddler, he was my constant companion through all of this, almost all of this. He is very helpful. He loves to help, and I did have him hand me screws and stuff. Anyway, so here I'm building, obviously, just the frame, doing the walls. This is very heavy for me, and I don't have a good place to work. I don't have a really nice workbench or something like that, and so I just kind of made do with what I had, which is why I've got the legs, the sides for the bench here. I did make use of the level. I wanted this to be as straight as possible, and then after I got these first two on, I was able to just eyeball it just to make sure that those side braces would be straight. Those of you who've watched my previous videos will know that I've had 6 knee surgeries and an ankle surgery, so getting up and off the floor is very challenging, and it's difficult. So I try not to do that a whole lot, getting down, getting up, unless I absolutely have to. And especially on this hard kitchen floor, it's just very painful to get back to my feet. And so I spent a lot of time bending over, which was really good for my hamstrings. They were quite sore soon after this. One of my favorite parts of any project is the actual building part when it comes together like this. It's a lot more fun than cutting. I don't enjoy cutting the wood itself. It's one of those necessary evils that, you have to do in order to get to a finished product. But I do really enjoy the part where I get to, screw it all together and make it into an actual visible thing that is, functional. And again, I don't have a really great place to do my work, and so I make do with the space I have, and plywood is so hard for me to lift, like that whole sheet, and so I'm like, I'm not going to lift it. Half the time I drop it back on myself, and I didn't want to have to deal with it, and so I just make do with what I've got, and just, used my short blade on my jigsaw, and propped up that plywood with 2 sets of 2x4s stacked on top of each other so that, I wouldn't hit the plywood behind it, but that worked really well and made this much easier for me to handle. And we do homeschool our kids, and I've got them doing chores inside while I'm working on this, and they keep coming out and asking if they can watch TV, and I'm like, have you finished your chores? I mean, we'd already done homeschool by this point, but they're like, can we watch TV? Have you finished your chores? No. Well, then go finish your chores. And my oldest sent both of her younger brothers out several times, and I probably cut a couple of those out, but the reason I sanded that was because that part is going to be against the carpet in my front room, and I didn't want it to snag the carpet, and so I sanded it down as smoothly as I could. And of course, having the frame on the cement gave me something to cut on. So that was really nice, being able to, cut it and have a place for the plywood to be leaned up on. And I've already attached, several parts of it here. My camera actually died. It was like 15 degrees. My camera died. And so I switched to a different device and and I didn't realize the camera had died. So I missed attaching that in the video, but it did happen, and now we are making I believe is this the side or is this the top? This might be the top I'm building. This is the top because I sat on it to see, is this the way, is this high enough? Is it deep enough? And I cut it over like that. You see, I've given it a lip because I wanted to be able to I didn't want to have to put a handle on it. And it's heavy enough where I didn't want the handle to break off or anything like that, and so I wanted to make sure that I would have an 1.5 inches. Actually, I think I went with 1.25 inches to be able to grip and lift it. And in the finished product, you'll be able to see that. And right here, I'm actually cutting out the plywood. This is only 1/2 inch plywood, and I didn't feel like it was sturdy enough. And so I decided to double up on it, so glue it together. So I'm cutting out the second layer to go together. And originally, I'd actually planned to use that plywood that's leaning up there against the side. It's got that nice wood veneer on it. I'd planned to do that. I even bought a stain, but I only had enough for the front of the toy box. And I was like, I don't want to just stain just the front. And obviously, plywood's not going to look great stained. And so I used leftover beadboard from when I built my built-in bookshelves in our living room. And wasn't what I wanted, but you know what? Again, I wanted to use what I had and not spend a whole lot of money on this project. So, as you can see, I make use with paint cans. These are mostly full ones, and they make it easier for me to cut and measure things. Okay, so here I'm getting ready. I'm prepping to glue the pieces together. I, cleaned off all the dust, and I believe I only show you gluing one part of it, so the glue had a massive clot in it, and it was very difficult to get it out. And so after I finished this half, I went and cleaned that out, and yeah, so got that all glued together. I'm gonna glue the other side, and that's probably all. Yep, that's all we get to see. So in here, obviously, I'm prepping the surface for the beadboard, cleaning it, gluing it. Again, you don't want to have a lot of dust because that, makes it so that the glue doesn't adhere as well. So And my garage is very dusty. I live in a town in the desert, and we have the mountain behind us, and it is not like a lush Seattle-esque mountain. It is juniper trees, which is where the channel name came from, Juniper Way. And it is very, very dusty out here. And so everything in the garage has to be cleaned before I can glue it. So anyway, so I'm attaching the beadboard. I only applied beadboard to the sides and the front because this thing is so big and so heavy, it will always be up against a wall on one side. And I was like, I'm not gonna spend the time putting beadboard on all four sides, which, you know, those of you who are more professional than I am, you're probably like, you should have done it on all four sides. But I'm like, I didn't have enough beadboard, first off, and second off, it's like, I didn't want to spend the time, you know. Here I am hammering down the nails from the what's it called? The nail gun. So the brad nailer, they did poke through, even though they should have. That's what they do. They poke through far enough where I'm obviously not going to leave that open. And so I hammered them down, and then I actually putty over them as well, which I don't think I have in the recording, but you can see it in later versions. And I wanted to make sure that the top was as smooth as possible, no jagged edges, no rough anything, because, you know, my kids are going to be playing with it. And the reason why I am filling that crack between the two halves is because I'm going to be tufting the top of the bench, you know, the upholstered part, and I wanted to make sure that the screw had something to grip when I drilled through, because I knew that I would be drilling through it. Not the screw, the the button thingy that goes inside the beadboard. And here I'm covering up the holes from the brad nailer and covering the seam right there. And with beadboard, when you place them together like that, you have to be really careful to remove as much excess caulking as possible, because that line, it disappears too much. And you see how we've got a thick line of beadboard, and then a cut, and then a tiny thin line, and then a cut, then a thick line, and a cut, tiny thin. If you fill that spot in, it ruins the pattern. And so I wanted to make sure that I removed enough of the caulk for that not to be an issue. And we just finished breakfast here. So the kids are eating pancakes. This is much later that evening, after dinner and everything, and I'm applying Kills adhesion. Oh, actually, no, not here. Here I'm actually just using a regular, what's it called, primer. But I did use Kills adhesion on the front and the sides, because beadboard tends to kind of have a little bit of a shiny surface, and I wanted to make sure it would attach well to it, you know. Anyway, this is my furniture paint. I call it my furniture paint. It's kind of like a cream white, and I use it on like all my furniture inside the house that I want to have white. It's just, I like this color. It's pretty. Okay, so this is after my husband and kids have gone to bed. It's like 11 o'clock at night, but I realized that I hadn't bought buttons for the tufting of the upholstery. And I was like, okay, so that needs to happen. And so it's like midnight, and I'm measuring out to figure out how many I need. And so, you know, I'm glad that I was able to do that. And I actually, the very ones that I bought on Amazon that came from Amazon Prime arrived the next day, and I absolutely love them. You'll see them in a little bit, but they're like crystals, you know, very sparkly and shiny. I like a lot of bling. So anyway, so when you're measuring for tufting, you want to make sure you measure evenly. And these are, I do believe I will show you in just a bit, but they're about 5 inches, maybe a little bit under 5 inches. Let's see, when I grab the measuring tape, and you go through and you circle all the spots you're going to drill. So a little over 5 inches for all of them. And I flip it to the side here so you can see the other way. Yeah, a little under 5 this way. So you just want to make sure that it's evenly spaced between all of them, and don't do it too close to the edges. I mean, you can if you want, but I like the way it looks a little bit better when it's not super close to the edges. And you want to make sure you drill holes that are big enough so that you can get a a Phillips tip or a regular screwdriver through it, and because you'll be doing that at a later point in this process. This adhesive, spray adhesive, was the devil. It was so frustrating to work with, mainly because it poofed everywhere, and so it ended up all over the floor. When I finished using it, I ended up having to clean the floor with rubbing alcohol to get it all off, because holy cow, that stuff went everywhere. And you can't really tell, but my feet are sticking to everything. The knife I'm using is a pocket knife that my father-in-law gave me. Actually, he gave it to me because I needed something to cut this actual foam up with. I cut the foam up from a mattress topper that my husband and I'd used, and I decided to let the kids play with it, kind of like one of those nugget cushion thingies that people have. And he was like, here, borrow my pocket knife. And it worked so well, and I loved it so much that he actually gave it to me. He's a gift giver. He loves giving gifts, and I'm very, very appreciative. That knife is like my favorite thing in the world. Anyway, so trim down the edges of the foam like I did. You see I cut down the sharp edges because you don't want sharp edges under the fabric. You want it to have a rounded appearance. And then this is where you're going to be putting the screwdriver through, and it's just to poke a hole into the foam so that you can see where you need to make bigger holes. And then you use a permanent marker like I did to make the holes easier to find, and then you're going to be cutting out a bigger hole. And I honestly, this is 3-inch foam. I thought an inch of a hole would be big enough. If I had to do it again, I would do it 1.5 inches, maybe even 2 inches. You're not going to notice a difference in the end if you make a bigger hole, because it's such thick foam that it has so far to go, and it was really, really challenging pulling the buttons through it. My hands were sore for days after. And anyway, so what I'm doing here is I'm applying extra furniture upholstery cover. I don't know what that stuff is called. I got it at Hobby Lobby, but it just, I wanted to make sure that the edge that we would sit on, not the back, it doesn't matter as much where the hinges would be. I wanted to make sure it was cushioned, extra cushioned, so that we couldn't feel that hard edge underneath it, and you can't, which I'm really glad. It worked out really, really great. Anyway, so now just attaching, the foam, and it says if you're doing foam, oh my goodness, I had to go get a new spray bottle. Can you tell how far that stuff poofed? When you're attaching foam to foam, it said spray both surfaces, so I did that. This is my dad's electric stapler. I'm really glad he let me borrow it. It did not end up working for this project. I had a very hard time getting it to work, and I cut out a lot of me trying to get it to go in. I ended up having to hammer over a lot of it and go at a really weird angle, and so it wasn't going straight down, and so I ended up buying one on Amazon, and I love it. The one I bought, absolutely love it. That thing is so tough. It went through multiple layers of fabric, multiple layers of cushion, all the way into the plywood. Super, super awesome. I'll put a link to it in the description if I remember. Hopefully I'll remember. I should actually be taking note of the stuff I should put in the description. But anyway, so trim off the excess of the foam and do stapling. You want to staple this stuff as tight as you can. I mean, you don't want to like squish down the thick foam to get it on as tight as you can, but you want it to be really snug, because when you use this stuff over and over, there's my new stapler. When you sit on these things over and over, eventually it will wear down, and you don't want to have a lot of loose fabric when it does. So make things as snug and as tight as you can. And you put this stuff over the heavier foam because it makes it so that the fabric has something to kind of, it holds the foam together better, especially since I had that crease there in the middle. But it just adds a little bit of thickness to the project. And I don't know exactly why. That's just my theories about why you want to do it. It makes it more of a cohesive unit. Corners are really hard, guys. So I had to kind of invent it. I wanted them to be nice, crisp, and not bulgy and weird. And so I kind of just messed around. And this corner, I did it a little bit too snug or too loose. And so I ended up cushioning over it a little bit, just so that it wouldn't be rough when we sat on it. And as you saw, I don't know if you noticed that, but that little piece I added on, I pulled the edges, so that I wouldn't have a hard line underneath the fabric. And here I am poking my finger through the top layer. You don't want to drill through that one, because that will make it, I mean, this stuff comes apart pretty easily. Just a finger hole is enough. You don't want to make it so it starts to rip. This fabric I got from Hobby Lobby. I was really pleased. I almost got not enough. I was very pleased. It ended up being absolutely perfect for the product. If I had to do it all over again, I would actually make it be a little bit longer. So I think it's 2.5 yards. I would go with 3 yards. This part was my favorite part of the whole process, but it was very, very challenging. Like I said, that foam, the hole I put in the foam was not thick enough. And yeah, so it wasn't a big enough hole. So here I have to pull so hard, and it was so hard. Like my hands just hurt super bad. And pretty soon here, I'm actually going to go grab my leather gloves just so I can have something to hold on that, that upholstery twine better. I also got that twine from Amazon. I believe I got the upholstery needles from Amazon too. I don't know. We've had them for a really long time. Anyway, so I zoomed in a little bit here, hoping that it would make it a little easier for you to see what I'm doing. So what you do is you stab the needle through into the hole, so you know where the hole is going through the wood. You want it to go all the way through all layers of foam, the fabric, and through the wood. Then you thread the button onto the twine. Then you take both loose ends of the twine, thread that partially through the needle so that it's like about 2 or 3 inches on the other side. And then you pull the needle through. So you put the needle through all the layers. It's kind of hard. It was hard sometimes to get it through the wood. It's already on the jewels, already through there, the button. Then you pull it through. Nope, you don't pull it through. I pulled it through. I didn't have enough extra twine on the needle there, so I had to do that again. And then here, see, I'm having to push it so hard to get it through that thick foam. Again, I would have done a bigger hole. Anyway, I'm sitting here listening to the fusion of entertainment and enlightenment. Anyway, so I'm going to do a little close-up here in a minute just to show you how to staple the twine, but basically you zigzag. So you pull it as tight as you can, and then you staple it in place, and then you pull it up the opposite direction, staple in place, pull it back down. You want to do that several times so that it doesn't slip loose. And I know a lot of people will screw the buttons down, but I wanted to do it this way because screws would, it's a lot of pressure, and that will eventually rip out. You know, the screws will eventually pop out, and this is not going anywhere. So let's see if we get at my other angle here soon. Nope, not yet. And this cushion, this bench top is very, very heavy, so I rest on my knees in between just to give me, leverage. And my toddler was like, "Can I play?" I'm like, "Yes, but I need to flip it around." Okay, so here's where I'm going to show you up a little bit closer up. And I was really nervous about how the fabric would come out. Having the fabric be at the right angle, having it line up perfectly for all the tufts, the holes. It didn't end up being a big deal. So here we stick the needle in, take the twine, both ends, thread them through, not all the way, not even halfway. You want to have enough left over. Then pull it through, grab it with your other hand, push from the top, get it as tight as you can, not even joking. You need it to be super tight. And it's really hard to aim with the stapler, and so sometimes I didn't get quite on, but anyway, so I'm gonna go on to the next spot here. So again, gotta find the hole. I found it first under the fabric because sometimes the hole didn't match up with what I cut through the foam. And that made it easier. So find the hole, thread the button, thread it through the needle, glove on, pull it through, and push from the top tight as I can, and staple, zigzagging, and another one just for good measure. I believe this is the last one that I have in the recording for us to watch. I just wanted to do another angle just in case you needed another view. I didn't cut off the excess fabric because I wasn't sure how much of it I would need, and tufting pulls the fabric farther than I wasn't sure how far it would pull. So what I'm doing here, this was a pointless endeavor. This fabric I purposefully picked the thickest fabric I could find because I wanted my kids to be able to play on this without me worrying of it ever wearing out. But, you know, a lot of the time when you have tufting, you do a diamond shape on the top and you fold the fabric in towards each other. And you can go back and watch how I did that. For such thick fabric, those diamonds disappeared almost as soon as I put them in. And then here you pull the fabric as tight as you can in between the diamonds. Pull it really, really tight. And if you want to have the folds, then like I did, I left the spots where I wanted folds blank, empty for now, just to make sure I had the fabric where I wanted it, and pulling it super, super tight. And the corners were so hard. My husband's talking to me right now. It's super, super hard to do these corners. So I did the fold, wanted it to fold inward towards the other one, staple in place once I liked it, and then just arrange the fabric until I got it into a position that I liked. And it's really, really hard. I'm not super good with fabric. I don't sew. I mean, I know how to sew, I just don't sew. And it's challenging for me. So my mother-in-law is really good at this stuff, and if she watches this video, she'll be like, well, you should have done it this way, like cut off the excess fabric probably, but I did not do that. Anyway, so folding the fabric towards each other so I have nice creases there, stapling it in place, and then coming to this side, trying to get a nice fold into this side of the fabric. And this is at this point is when I realized I needed to cut off that excess fabric. And since I already have it stapled, I can cut the excess fabric off. And I skipped cutting the rest of it. This is me wanting to make sure that that fold that I created was the fabric was as tight as possible, that I don't have a lot of bulges. I wanted to make it as stationary as possible. And as you can see, I am stapling through multiple layers. I mean, and you'll see it again in a bit, but I'm stapling through a lot of layers of fabric and cushion, and this thing is just a power horse. It was awesome. It cost $49 on Amazon, and this is me trying to get those diamond creases again. Pointless. They look really, really nice. I highly recommend you get them if you have the right kind of fabric. If the fabric's a little bit thinner than what I was working with, but they didn't end up working super well. It still looks okay though, without having them in there. Anyway, so trying to get this other corner done. I found it easier to fold one side and then do a crease on the other and then tuck it under and staple. That was interesting. Oh, this is me doing the other side. I just finished the one side and my toddler's like, can I get on it? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. I don't care. As long as you don't get too close to what I'm working on. I believe he just gave me a kiss there. Okay, getting this other side down, putting in a crease that would, my husband's talking to me again. Putting in a crease, wanting to make sure it just folds over in a way that is nice. Oh gosh, guys, I even cut out a lot of me working on this side. This corner was really hard for me. That one was easier. Okay, now is where I cut off some of the extra fabric and then just stapling through all of the multiple layers of fabric. And it's a lot, but like I said, the stapler just did amazing. Okay, so one thing when you're stapling, and you've probably noticed this from my video and from other videos, when you're stapling the cushion, the wraparound cushion, and also the fabric, you want to staple a line. You don't want to skip spots because that will eventually pull and the fabric will eventually get loose around it. You also run the risk of the fabric eventually ripping on the staples. So you get as straight as a line and as close of a line as possible, just like that, so that you can, so that the fabric doesn't wear unevenly, and so that you don't ever get pockets and tough, like pulls, weird, what are they called? Pleats, things like that. Anyway, so I'm stapling this on. I didn't actually originally plan to have the bottom of this covered, but I had enough leftover fabric, and I just love it. Just makes it look like a finished piece of work, right? So I ended up adding it, and I'm so glad I did. So here we're gonna come through. Oh, right there, you saw that. I'll go back to that corner again, but that's me going through like 6 layers of fabric. This thing is a power horse. I'm using longer nails or longer staples for these harder parts. They're like 1/2-inch staples. And that's it. It's finished. Now the hinge part. And I got the hinges out where I needed them. I was going to ask my kids to come sit on it, but I was like, they wiggle too much. And so I ended up enlisting my husband. I was like, sit. And he was happy to do so. He's such a good sport. One tip when drilling here, you guys know how to drill into wood. Pretty much everybody knows how to drill into wood, unless this is your very first time working with wood. I always pre-drill. Plywood, not as necessary. I didn't probably need to pre-drill with the plywood. But with the fabric, you want to apply a lot of pressure when you're drilling into the fabric and the foam, because otherwise it does what it just did there. It catches and it pulls. Also, when you're pulling the drill out, you know, when you're drilling wood, you can actually pull the drill out while you're still going the same direction, the forward direction. You can't do that with foam and fabric. So when you're drilling in, put a lot of pressure on so you can cut through that fabric and go into the wood underneath and go through the foam. You go as fast and hard as you can. Then when you're pulling out, reverse the drill and drill the opposite direction. Otherwise, it will pull the fabric and it will pull the foam out. And that's not fun. So that's something I discovered by accident. Anyway, so I think here in a bit, you'll see that when I do the fabric, I didn't push hard enough and it kind of catches. So watch this here in just a second. Oh, it went too fast. Nope, right there. See, I'm like, dang it. So that's when I learned that you have to push hard and fast. Otherwise it'll catch the fabric instead of cutting through the fabric. And of course, make sure you have a good high quality drill bit, sharp. You don't want to use a dull one because you'll have problems with the fabric again. I did not measure these hinges perfectly. I just eyeballed it. They are about 1.5 feet apart, I would guess. My camera makes it look like these two aren't as far apart as the first and second one, but they are about the same. And at this point, I did not need my husband's help anymore. And he was able to go. Anyway, so my bench is finished, and that's how it opens. I'm going to be building something that will help it stay open. I wanted to do like a hydraulic system where, you know, you lift it up and it stays open like a piano bench hinge type thing. But I'm not going to end up doing that just because my construction is different enough where it would not work. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. If it is, please hit the like and the subscribe button. And if you have any questions, go ahead and comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Like I said, I'm going to actually construct something to hold the chest open so that when the kids are getting their toys in and out, it doesn't slam shut on them. But okay, thank you so much. I'll talk to you all later. Bye.